So I'm going to be talking about WoAD, which is an app for Android devices. So I was told you're a pretty technically advanced bunch, and you'll all be more or less familiar with Winlink. So hopefully that's the case. Okay, so a little bit about myself. My name's Andrew Walker. Call sign is Victor Alpha 7, Yankee Alpha Alpha, and I'm based in Vancouver, Canada, where it's currently about 80 Fahrenheit. And we're actually in what we consider a bit of a heat wave. So my background in education was physics and astronomy. It's not much of a career path in astronomy, so I got involved in various software projects since then. Such things as data analysis, visualization, experimental design, HMI, and various projects involving satellites, so that's instrument control, firmware, ground station control, tracking, and so on. And more recently, amateur radio as well. So since 2015, I've got my ham license, and I've been volunteering with Vector, and that's the amateur radio program for the city of Vancouver. And I'm sure that most of you are affiliated with MCOM type organizations. So the mission statement of Vector is bringing together the power of ordinary citizens and amateur radio to enhance community resiliency for times of emergency and disaster. And I'm sure that's a sentiment which is familiar to a lot of you. So when I joined Vector, we had these things, for want of a better word, called grab-and-go kits. And these were designed to be deployed following an earthquake or other natural disaster to various sites around the city in case the other forms of communication went down. As you can see in the picture there, there's 3 radios operating on 3 different bands. There's a modem and a Windows laptop. And these things were the size of a large suitcase and weighed in at about 30 kilograms. So grab and go was a bit of a stretch. And I thought this was kind of daft, and we needed something that was actually portable, that we could deploy quickly and easily. And so the obvious choice was putting something onto an Android device. Several good reasons for that. They're ubiquitous, pretty much, well, not everyone, but about 70% of the global market is what they've captured so far. They're portable, they're small, they're easy to recharge, and they're very good at connectivity. So they obviously have data. They also typically come with Wi-Fi, a USB connection, an audio connection, Bluetooth, and more recently, Bluetooth Low Energy. And of course, they also have a built-in GPS, which is very useful. That's sort of a rationalization after the fact. The truth is, it's what I had on hand at the time. I had an old Android device kicking around. So I thought, well, why don't I use that and try and get something going? And so in its sort of optimal form, you can see on the right there, that's an Android device with a Kenwood THD74, and that weighs in at less than a kilogram. And you can pretty much put that in your pocket and walk around with it. So a little bit of the history. I started this back in 2019, doing the very start of development. Released it sort of just to a few individuals in August 2020. Added it to Google Play about a year later. And since then, I've been doing about monthly releases. That's going to continue, I hope, until it's what I would consider feature complete. And there's also other things that need to be updated on it, even if I don't actually add any more features. So the Winlink standard templates are constantly changing. Android, of course, is always updating various things. And so it's good to stay on top of that. You don't want to get too far behind. And also Google Play is constantly changing its requirements. So in the words of the Red Queen, my dear, here we must run as fast as we can just to stay in place. And if you wish to go anywhere, you must run twice as fast as that. So every release, you have to worry about what Android has changed in the meantime. So what is WoAD? As I've already said, it runs on Android devices, and it's a client of the Winlink global radio email system. So when you start it up, it looks pretty much like any other email client would. You have ways of creating messages, replying to them, forwarding them. You can export them, import them, delete, etc. It has messages arranged by folder, again, as you would see in any email client, inbox, sent, outbox, etc. So the view on the screen there just shows you what you get if you click on the hamburger icon at the top left. You see the folders available to you, and you can pick one of those off. Where WoAD is different from a typical email client is the concept of sessions. So obviously you have the same thing in Winlink. When you want to actually send or receive messages, you have to open up a session, you have to configure it, and then you typically have to start it as well. And WoAD operates pretty much in the same way. One significant difference is in Winlink, there's essentially one session, you start it, and then you configure it the way you want it to set it up for that time. In WoAD, it's designed that you can create as many sessions as you want. And then later on, you can pick them off and run them individually. So you might want to have a Telnet Winlink session just set up as a default. You may want to have a session for each radio. You may, there may be a couple of gateways that you typically interact with. So you may want to have a session for each gateway and each radio. Combination is really whatever you want to do with it. But the idea is that once it's configured, then you can just forget about it. You just go back to it and run it. Obviously, making sure you got the right thing plugged into the device when you do so. So as I just mentioned, a session defines how the messages will be sent and received. WoAD, when you start it up, after you've initially installed it, it will come with a default session that just does a telnet connection to see the CMS. So all you would need to put in initially is your Winlink username and password. But you can add new sessions as you see fit. So the configuration options for a session are pretty much what you would expect. You can give it a name just so you can easily identify it. It's not used for any other purpose. The protocol that you want to use, so that might be Telnet, Packet, RDOT, VARA, whatever it is that you're interested in doing. The type is a little bit different from Winlink. So in Winlink, when you start a session, it's typically put into a listening mode. So if there's an incoming connection, it will pick that up. In WoAD, I split it. So there's the concept of an outgoing session and a listener session. So if you run an outgoing session, it will start up, make the connection, exchange messages, and shut down. If you start up a listener session, it will do, as the name implies, it will listen through an incoming connection. And it will do that indefinitely. And when someone tries to connect to you, it will establish the connection. You'll go through the normal interchange of messages, and then at the end, it will go back into listening mode. So it will stay there until you explicitly shut it down. The settings are protocol dependent. Obviously, they're depending on whether you're doing Telnet or Packet. Things can be quite different. You'll typically have a destination address. If you're doing Packet, then it will be the TNC settings, so things like TX delay, the persistence, the tail, that kind of thing. There's also an auto connect feature, so you can ask WoAD to start up a particular session when you start WoAD, or you can ask it to start a session at some specified interval. You can also specify whether you want to send and receive messages, or you can send only or receive only. And finally, there's a notes section. You can type in anything you like. It's just sort of a memo to yourself about the session that you've configured. Okay, so before I go into more detail, just some quick terminology. So the way I tend to think of WoAD is that it's one protocol on top of another, and several layers deep. So at the very bottom is the B2F protocol. And this is the thing that's actually responsible for the interchange of the messages. And this is an extension of the FBB, which I believe was created by Jean-Paul Roublat. And that was designed back in the days of when people were doing BBS stuff. So it's really designed for interactive terminal use. So B2F extends that protocol a little bit, and it adds support for things like attachments, multiple addresses, and so on. So it makes it more useful for a non-interactive program like WoAD and all the others. A little bit more, I'm sure most of this is familiar to you already, but then there's Packet or AX25, which is a data link layer protocol. And this basically breaks down outgoing information into packets. It will establish and end a connection, and it ensures delivery of packets. So each packet going out has a number associated with it. And if a packet gets lost or gets buried by the noise, then the whole protocol understands how to recover from that situation. KISS is a way of framing an AX25 packet, and it also allows you to define connection parameters. And you'll see where this is useful later when we're talking about connections to various types of TNC and so on. So the last one, modem. Modem just converts a digital packet to and from audio. Obviously, we're sending this out over the radio waves typically, and so it is an audio connection in a sense. And the most commonly used method for doing the modulation is AFSK at 1200 bits per second. So the vast majority of Winlink gateways are running at 1200 bits per second, and there's a few at 9600, and that's VHF, UHF. So quick caution, I guess. I find that pretty much anything that sits between the computer, or in this case, the phone, and the radio calls itself a TNC. I don't find that particularly helpful because there's a wide range of functionality in those devices. So in my head, at least, I tend to classify them as TNCs, so true terminal node controllers, and these things understand AX25. And the communication between the device and the TNC is, you can think of it as just a terminal type connection. Not many devices are true TNCs anymore. Then there are KISS modems, which also refer to themselves as KISS TNCs. That seems to have become popular. And these translate the digital packets to and from audio. And I'll go through some examples of those in a bit. And then the last one is, for want of a better name, is what I call a PTT interface. So these things essentially provide control of the radio's PTT, and you'll find they often also act as an external sound card. And we'll take a look at some of those as well. All right, so here's sort of an overview of how WoAD works. And just see if I can switch on the laser pointer. All right, so the top gray square is sort of WoAD encapsulated, showing the various layers. So BTF, as I mentioned, is sort of the base layer that knows how to exchange messages. And if you're just talking over an internet connection, whether that's data or Wi-Fi, I always tend to refer to any internet connection as Wi-Fi. So just replace that by data/Wi-Fi. So if you're talking over Wi-Fi to the Winlink RMS, then all you really need WoAD to understand is B2F, and you can make your connection, exchange messages, and so on. If you want to do a little bit more than that, then you'll also use WoAD's ability to talk AX25 or packet. And then that allows it to interface with KISS TNCs, as it also understands the KISS protocol. And it can talk via pretty much any of its communication channels, so Wi-Fi, USB, Bluetooth, and Bluetooth Low Energy to a KISS modem. Obviously, the KISS modem is talking to a radio, transmitting everything over the air, and then that goes to a radio at the other end, whether that's a Winlink gateway or possibly a peer-to-peer client. At the same time, if you want to, you can also talk to WoAD's internal modem. And if you do that, you would then go through the audio interface of the phone. So most phones, or maybe all phones nowadays, support USB audio. So this could be a USB connection happening here, or it could be a 3.5 mil TRRS, just your typical headphone jack. And then that would talk to a PTT interface, largely just to control the PTT, and then to a radio. I'll talk about the others briefly, but it also understands the WA8DED TNC protocol. So if you happen to have a WA8DED device, then you can also communicate with that through WoAD. And WA8DED is essentially what Pactor modems use as well. And then just for completeness, it also understands VARA, FM and HF, and RDOP. Obviously, VARA only runs on Windows, and it expects an internet connection, so you'll be going through the Wi-Fi for that. And RDOP runs on many devices, so that allows for a Wi-Fi or a USB connection. And again, all of those things will connect to a radio, which will talk to a radio at your destination. Okay, so to go back, so now what I'm sort of doing is taking this layer and sort of splitting it vertically, and then I'll be doing the same things for packet and KISS and audio as well. So for now, we'll just be looking at the BTF, Wi-Fi to Winlink. And so that looks like this. WoAD speaks BTF through Wi-Fi to the Winlink gateway. And the session that you would create, if you're talking to a Winlink gateway, it would look like this. So you just say protocol is Winlink. You don't have to set a type of outgoing or listener, because there is no listening for a gateway to come back to you, because it's not going to do that. And you can also talk to, if you go into settings, you can also talk to RMS relay and a post office as well. And in that case, you have to set an IP address that you want to communicate with. If you want to talk to an internet client, then you change the protocol to Telnet P2P. And there you can set it up as outgoing or listener. And the settings will just be some IP address. But obviously what we're more interested in is radio type stuff. If the internet's working, then presumably we'll just be using standard email. So to get over the radio, you now need to bring in WoAD's ability to understand packet and KISS. And it will then be talking to a KISS modem. So here you would just set your protocol to packet. And then when you go into the settings, you set your TNC type to KISS. Here you can also set your destination address, so whatever the call sign and SSID is that you want. And WoAD also can download the Winlink gateways for you, given your current location. And so you can just, if you don't want, if you don't know, or you want to try a new gateway, you can just select it from a list. So let's see some examples of that. I just grabbed these off the internet. So in this case, WoAD is talking to a KISS modem, I believe it is. Actually, I think that's, I believe it's a, oh yeah, okay, so it is a TNC RPR TNC. So it's just a KISS TNC. And that's via a USB connection. Even more portable than that, in a sense, is because the Kenwood THD74 knows how to communicate via Bluetooth, and so does WoAD. You can establish a connection between the two, just so you just go through the normal pairing process that you do in Bluetooth. And then WoAD will talk to the KISS modem on the THD74. I expect most of you are familiar with the Moby Linked. So again, the Moby Linked also supports only supports a Bluetooth connection. And so to WoAD, it's essentially transparent whether it's talking to the Moby Linked or a D74. They're both a Bluetooth device. They're both a KISS modem. They both follow all the rules. And so everything happens pretty transparently. If you do happen to have a D74, WoAD will also allow you to configure pretty much everything on it. So you can specify what channel you want to use. You can set the frequency on it, the power, etc. So if you have a session set up for that, you can just plug the D74 in and it will make all the configurations before it actually connects to the KISS modem. And more recently, the new Moby Linked TNC4 also allows Bluetooth Low Energy, which WoAD also supports. So you can use one of these in BLE mode. This is only in the TNC4. So earlier versions of the Moby Linked are just Bluetooth. Okay, so it also supports audio modes. So it has an inbuilt modem that supports AFSK 1200 bits per second, also 300 bits per second if you want to go slower. And it also supports frequency shift keying at 9600 BPS. And obviously, if you're using FSK at 9600 BPS, you do require a direct link to your radio's modulator and discriminator. So this isn't going to work with a Baofeng. Your radio does require a dedicated input. So don't feed that signal into your microphone jack and don't take the output from your speaker jack because it isn't going to work. The signal will be corrupted to make it essentially useless. But if you do have what's often called a data port on your radio, then you should be able to work 9600 BPS with just WoAD and an audio connection. And another caveat, when you're working on audio mode, you do need to be careful to silence any incoming notifications, because if you're transmitting at the time through WoAD, there's a good chance those will go out as well. So switch off any apps that produce sound, and you also want to switch off any other audio processors So a lot of phones come with things like Dolby Atmos, THX, and those will distort the signal, rendering them almost certainly useless. So if you want to run an audio mode, again, you just select the protocol will be packet and the TNC type. And here I sort of fall into my own, hoisted on my own petard here. I refer to it as a TNC type, and I should probably change that to interface type, but that should be audio. And you can see now that we're talking, so BTF talks to packet, talks to my modem, and then we go out through an audio interface. So these are some of the audio interfaces that WoAD will work with. Some of you are probably familiar with things like the DigiRig and SignalLink. You can also essentially create your own. If you can buy a CM108, which is essentially a sound card. And if you go online, you'll find any number of sites that will tell you how to convert this to add PTT functionality and wire in a cable for your particular radio. So again, don't buy one of these expecting it to work. You do need to make modifications. But if you buy a DigiRig or SignalLink, the new version, this is a DigiRig Lite, which is a relatively new addition to DigiRig. And then there's this AOIC all-in-one chip that also does the PTTing for you too. So WoAD, in audio mode, WoAD will support a number of methods of PTT. So on the DigiRig, it actually uses the USB RTS signal to trigger the PTT. And on the CM108 has a GPIO pin, so general purpose input-output pin. And WoAD will send the necessary signal to trigger that high-low. And by making the necessary modification, that will trigger your PTT. And that's what the DigiRig Lite also uses. These are actually using, this is the same chip that you see in both of these. I'm not sure if it's the same chip on the AOIC, and my guess is it is. And I believe it's a CM108 in the classic DigiRig as well. SignalLink is using something slightly different. And if you want to go, okay, so this is just a picture of the DigiRig hooked up. So it's a USB interface to the DigiRig, but it's carrying a USB audio signal. So when you plug in a USB audio device, Android will just automatically route your audio to and from that. So from the coding point of view, there's absolutely no difference when you plug in the DigiRig. It just thinks it's playing sound over the speaker and receiving it on the microphone. It just happens to be going through the USB audio. And then from the other side of the DigiRig, it just has a cable specific to the Baofeng or Kenwood, as they use the same, and that just plugs into the normal interface. And obviously we're not doing 9600 BPS on this, as that isn't going to work. If you want to go even older school, so when I started programming this, I created my own audio interface, and that just uses, actually plugs into the audio of the phone, so a 3.5mm jack. One side plugs into the device here. There's a little bit of circuitry. It's a couple of diodes, a couple of capacitors, and some isolation transformers. And this operates the PTT, and then this side plugs into your radio. And the PTT, well, the audio comes in on the left channel, and the PTT is controlled by sending a sinusoidal signal on the right channel. So that actually allows you to trigger the PTT slightly early and hold on to it later as well. And obviously same thing with the USB audio. All those methods allow you to trigger early and hold on late if you wish. Okay, so that's sort of the more technical side. WoAD also has a lot of the additional features that you've come to know and love in Winlink. So it supports templates/forms, whatever terminology you use. So it ships out with the standard Winlink forms embedded in it. You can also add your own custom forms, and you can, if you have certain forms that you use constantly, you can specify 5 default forms so you can get to them more quickly, so you don't have to hunt through the folder structure. And it will also keep track of your 5 most recently used forms. I've shown a example template form on a tablet device here, which is a bit self-serving. You can imagine that on a telephone, on a much smaller screen, you have to do a little bit of scrolling around in order to see the entirety of the form. Good thing is that if you enter a field and you hit submit, then it will take you to the next field if that field is obligatory. If there are no further obligatory fields, then it will just submit it for you. So it's relatively quick to negotiate, even if you're operating on a pretty small phone. I mean, I did most of my testing initially on a pretty old Android device. I think it was Android 4.4. So, you don't see too many screens that small around anymore. And it's pretty usable. Also supports some of the more slightly esoteric functions, so auxiliary call signs, tactical addresses, Winlink catalog queries. It will export a lot of stuff, the logs, messages, sessions. And logs is something I haven't actually mentioned, but there is a log screen in WoAD, and that will show you you can monitor the packets as they're coming in and out, and it will give you any warning messages, errors, etc. So if you're having problems with WoAD, that's often the first place to go, as that's where it will tell you why a connection isn't happening, most likely. You can do grid file requests. It supports filling in an ICS 309 automatically. Message receipt and acknowledgement, position reports. So it makes use of the inbuilt GPS to fill in position reports if there are forms that require information, location information. Much of that information will get pre-filled, assuming the template is constructed correctly. It will give you weather forecasts, should you so desire. And I haven't really used this because I just don't do BBS type stuff, but there is support for terminals. So in theory, just as you can create a session to exchange messages, you can create a terminal session, and that will let you log into BBS, etc. I guess a BBQ32. I haven't really tried it. I was in correspondence with someone who wanted the feature. I didn't hear any complaints. So I'm assuming for now that it's working. If not, let me know and I will take a look into it. So sort of a roadmap for the future, none of which I'm going to guarantee or give timelines for, but I do hope to add support for 2400 BPS, which I realize is rarely used, and also 4800 BPS. And that's not because it's going to be particularly useful, more just sort of a challenge to actually get it working, as I haven't done these, use a slightly different technique. So instead of frequency shift keying, you're phase shift keying. So it's just out of interest. I hope to add PACTOR modem support. It already knows how to talk to a WA8DED modem. So in theory, talking to a PACTOR modem should be relatively simple. It's just I have to take myself physically to where there is a Pactor modem and sit down for the day and try and get that going. Someone recently asked me about Arden, not something I'm at all familiar with, but it's something that's, I'm now aware of at least. So if anyone thinks that might be useful, feel free to contact me. And especially if you are able to provide information or access to Arden so that I can test things out. And another possibility is native support for an RDOT modem. My concern here at the moment is the sort of multiple code bases, potential license issues. So I'm sort of hanging back to see how that all pans out, but that's certainly a possibility. And right, so if you're interested in using WoAD, trying it out, the website is woad.summersaltd.com. There's documentation. I've also recently added an interface guide, which might help you hook up to your radio. You can submit a bug report, make a feature request, download the latest version. If you want to install it, you can do so from the Google Play Store. It costs just under $10 Canadian. So depending on the exchange rate, that's somewhere around 7 or 8 US, I would imagine. If you're happy installing from an APK file, you can download from the website and install that for free. And there's also a support group, so if you can join that. I currently have it set up. You have to ask to join just to try and keep the spammers out. So if you do ask to join, just mention WoAD in the reason for joining, just so I'm more likely to let you in promptly. And I think that covers everything I had. So if there's any questions, I see some came through on the chat. So it looks like the one on 2 meters has already been covered. And someone asked, what is the battery drain of WoAD? I think the answer to that is it depends what you're doing with it. It's going to be relatively small if you're talking to a KISS modem. Well, maybe that's not true. If you're talking to an externally powered KISS modem, it's going to be relatively low. Otherwise, the KISS modem is going to be draining your battery. It's not something I've really measured. But if you're sitting there in listener mode, it will drain your battery. I would imagine it's not going to be much worse than watching a video, though. But that's something I should probably check.
Could you lower your desktop?
Sure, yes.
Okay. Bill, you got a question?
Yes, sir. Great presentation. I've been experimenting with WoAD on my Android. I guess it would be Android. I'm well versed in computer stuff, but connecting an Android phone to anything, the only thing I thought the port on the bottom was for was charging. I didn't realize that it acts like a standard USB. Is that how I should consider it as compared to my computer?
Yes. So most modern Android devices. So yeah, initially, when the USB on Android devices was essentially to charge it, and you could also attach it to your computer, and it would look sort of like an external drive. More recent Android devices support USB host mode. So you can actually plug in pretty much anything into a modern phone. So it could be keyboard, mouse, USB drive, etc. And that includes plugging in the kind of modem that you would normally think of working with Windows. So depending, I typically use what's called a USB OTG on the go. You just, I don't know if you're going to be able to see that. So it's just a short stubby cable, USB-C at one end, and it goes to USB-A, I guess it is, on the other. And then that lets me plug in pretty much anything. I find talking to a lot of devices, I don't even need that. So if I'm talking to a Kenwood
Yeah,
D72, if I'm talking to a Kenwood D72, D74, I just have a USB cable which is goes from USB-C to USB mini for the 72, and I think it's a micro for the 74.
Yeah, I have the D72, so
Yeah.
that caught my interest immediately.
Yeah, so you should just be able, assuming that your phone supports USB host mode, and if it's, relatively new, that shouldn't be a problem. It should do, I would think. You can always look it up on, one of the websites that tells you all the functionality of these phones. I think, is it GMS Central is one. And then, yeah, just plug it in.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, Gene, you got your hand up. You want to take it away, sir?
Yes. Good evening, everybody. This is Gene, N3XUS from glorious Killeen, Texas. Will this work on a Chromebook?
That's a good question. I don't know. Can you run Android apps on a Chromebook?
Well, it's Google based,
Yeah.
so I might be wrong, but I would think that you could. I mean, I don't think I've tried, but have I tried? I don't know if I've tried or not, but give me some ideas.
Confess I haven't tried. I know there is sort of ongoing efforts to let you run apps on other systems. I imagine a quick Google would answer the question. I mean, I'm guessing Chromebooks don't come with GPS, so you'd lose some functionality.
No, you're right there, but I have radios that do have built-in GPS, and I also have a GPS dongle that might suffice, maybe.
Yeah, it wouldn't get the information into WoAD. So when it came to filling out forms and things like that, that would be missing. But yeah, that's a good question and something I should investigate. Yeah.
All right, I just throwing it out there. Thank you.
All right. Barry, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
What do you got in chat?
Okay, Dave wants to know, can you do 9600 BPS on 2 meters, or is it restricted to higher frequency bands?
I'm going to pass on that. On 2 meters. Well, I probably shouldn't answer that because I'm in Canada. So what the Canadians think about it may not be what you guys think about it.
Okay.
Yeah. But in theory, yes. Whether or not someone will come knocking on your door, I don't know.
Okay, that's fair. And that's everything, basically.
Okay.
Okay, any more hands up or comments? Been a great presentation. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see anything at all.
Outstanding job. Thank you for the information.
Peter just put something in chat.
Yeah, can you download Android apps from the Google Play Store app and use them on your, you can download Android apps from the Google Play Store app and use them on your Chromebook, Gene.
Okay, well, if anyone tries that, let me know how it goes, because yeah,
Sure.
I've never even considered that as a possibility.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate that follow-up information, and I will check it out, and I will let you know, Andrew,
Yeah.
how it comes out.
All right, let's make another run here at questions. Any hands up or chat questions? Everybody's being pretty quiet here. It's been a great presentation again, and I really appreciate you coming on and doing this. Okay, we might be able to wrap this up early tonight. Yes. Okay, I don't see any questions, any more, is there comments? And did you have anything more you want to offer?
I can't think of anything offhand, no. I think I sort of covered all the basics, and I'd encourage you to go out and try it out.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it.
Peter answered on 2 meters. 19,200 BPS is the max, so 9,600 baud could be handled easily.
Yeah, just make sure your radio has the necessary port. Yeah.
Okay, good information. All right, with that, I want to start wrapping this up unless somebody's got more to offer, and we're hoping for it. Otherwise, I want to say 73s, and we'll see you all next week.